the bees that are gonna go with her form around her in a big ball, and they wait till the scouts go out, and they look for a tree or a place where they can start a new colony. Once they find a place, they come back, okay? And they tell the swarm, and the swarm goes to this new place, and you've got a new, that's how they multiply. And there was something I just came to mind.
Swarms will never sting.
Yeah, they won't sting you. While they're swarming, they'll come out of the hive and like a swirl coming out of the hive, and the queen will go and, oh yes. No, I forgot it again.
Anyway, you may have seen pictures of people with a bunch of bees on their face like a beard, or they're covered. These people are handling swarms. If they put the queen here, then all the bees will hang there and they won't sting him.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of pictures like that, even on YouTube. If you ever look, people like to do silly things, and they put bees all over themselves, and everybody says, oh, they'll be stung, but the swarming bees will not sting.
Now, honey, when it comes out of the hive, is liquid, just like this. It shows how it pours out, just like that. Yes, yes, Ann.
What kind of plants attract bees?
Pardon?
What kind of plants attract bees?
Almost every flower. In Saskatchewan, the main flower are those canola crops. Wherever you see that golden field of canola flowers, you can be sure that a beekeeper somewhere nearby has a bunch of hives so the bees can collect it. That's the main crop in Saskatchewan is canola.
If you couldn't grow a crop, but you could only grow one plant in a garden, and you wanted to attract bees, what plant would you suggest?
I really don't have any information about that, because I'll tell you what my son did when we
All
started.
colorful flowers will attract them.
Any colorful flower, but in the city, okay, the first year we went back into beekeeping, 4 years ago, he put a hive in his backyard and one in our daughter's backyard and one in a friend's backyard, because he wanted to see how much honey he could collect from all the flowers in the city. You know how much honey he got? None, zero. Because people in the city spray their lawns to kill the dandelions, and if the bees go on those dandelions, they die. And they spray other flowers, and so the insecticides that are used in the city do not make, at least in Saskatoon, are not friendly to bees. So we didn't try that again. Okay. Our bees have been threatened. I don't know if you've heard about the empty hive syndrome. A beekeeper would go and check his hive, and there's 50,000 bees in there, and they're all working. And all of a sudden the canola comes into flower, and then they're really collecting honey, and he comes back 2 weeks later, opens the hive, and there's not one bee in it. They're gone. And this was happening all over North America. And this was a very dangerous thing in terms of raising honey. It was a threat to the production of honey by bees. Well, they found out that there was a spray. When the canola comes into bloom, there's a spray the farmers are using to kill all the weeds. Now, that spray did not in itself, you know what a bee can do? A bee can fly out of that hive and fly a mile away and see a field of flowers and go down and get some nectar and pollen, fly back to the hive, go in, and call the other bees come around, and he gives a little taste of that nectar that he collected. And he does a little dance, a little bee dance. Now, this is how wonderful creation of God, how these little bees can do a little dance, and those bees that are around him can fly out of that hive and fly right to that field where he told them to. And when they fly to that field, they can always fly right back. It's amazing. But what this chemical did was, the bees would go on to the canola, and they take the nectar, and with the nectar there was a little bit of that chemical, and they would collect the pollen, they fly back to the hive, and they go again and again, and every time they went and took a little more nectar with that chemical in it, it affected their memory. And eventually, when they flew out, they'd get the nectar and the pollen, and they didn't know how to get back to the hive, and all they do is they fly around the circle till they die, and they drop dead. And that's what was happening. These bees are going out, thousands of them, and getting this chemical with the nectar, and they couldn't find their way back to the hive. And by the time the beekeeper came back, now we know what that chemical is, and in Saskatchewan, and I'm a beekeeper, before I put my bees out, I check within a 5-mile radius, because bees can fly up to 5 miles to get their nectar and pollen. I check and see who's gonna be raising canola and what kind of spray they're gonna use, okay? Because otherwise, I'm gonna lose my bees. There's also some diseases. There's American foul brood, which is a nasty disease, that affects, when the queen lays a little egg and it turns into a little larva, the disease, it doesn't hurt adult bees, but what it does is, it attacks those little pupa, and if the bee is carrying the disease and is feeding a little larva in the cell, in the little cup, if he passes on that disease, the bee just turns that little larva turns black and dies. But we now have a chemical that can prevent that, okay? And so when we feed them, we have to feed them sugar syrup in the spring, so that they will not, that will kill the disease that the adult bees have if they have it, and it won't affect the larva, okay? Also, there's an enemy of the bee. It's called the tracheal mite. It's a microscopic little, it's a microscopic sized little mite that gets into the breathing system of the bee and can eventually kill a bee. Well, we now have a chemical that we put in the spring, and if any of the bees are affected with that mite, it will kill them. Okay? So we've got the diseases pretty much under control.
So basically, you're saying nothing with pesticides, any kind of colorful flower is the best kind of plant. So it doesn't matter if it's a flower or a vegetable that flowers.
No.
Anything, as long as there's no pesticides.
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
Because pesticides not good for bees at all, ever. Chemicals not good. Guys got that? If you're gonna learn anything today about what to grow, to how to help the bees, because we know all the importance and the benefits, it's this. Because remember, we're trying to figure out what to plant, right? And we probably can't plant a canola field. Or we could go and encourage people to plant canola, but not to spray it, okay? But our job to help this community is to understand bees are really, really important. Bees need tons of flowers. Bees are so helpful to us. So what can we do? Maybe what we need to do is start a campaign against organic or natural or pesticide-free plants, right?
That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
There's a problem with monarch butterflies too.
It's a
They
problem
fly.
with
They
many
fly from
insects.
British Columbia all along the coast of California down to
Uh-huh.
Mexico,
Yeah.
and they've been doing that for hundreds of years, thousands
Right.
maybe. And now, and the flower. There used to be wildflowers all the way,
Yeah.
and now it's nothing but green grass.
So even
So
wildflowers.
they're
would
dying.
help.
Oh, yeah.
Naturalized wildflowers. So when people are planning and they're putting in these beautiful yards for schools and these new houses coming up and everybody's laying down their sod, are they thinking about the flowers and the plants they should be planting? Or are they thinking about, no, I don't want any dandelions on my brand new yards?
Yeah.
So what are they thinking about? They're not thinking the same way we are trying to get you to think and to understand the reasons. Anyways, we only have about 12 minutes left,
Mhm.
so if you wanna give these guys a taste of the honey, we have to
Yes.
do it the next, because they have to catch buses lots.
Oh, yeah, okay,
So,
here we go.
I don't mean to cut you off, it's
No,
been
no.
fantastic, but
Yeah.
you guys should ask any questions you have now, and you should be taking down some notes. You're trying to learn what is good for a community garden, what is good to grow in a garden, why are we growing them, should we be planting all flowers? Okay? So could you, if there's any other questions, you can ask them now.
The bees pollinate. They pollinate cucumbers. They pollinate all the vegetables.
Yeah.
And Albert Einstein said once that if there were no bees, that mankind would not survive.
Exactly.
Because all the plants need to be pollinated.
Yeah.
Some plants are pollinated by wind, but
Yeah.
very few.
Very few, right.
The
So you
trees,
need the
yeah,
bees.
everything, we need bees, yeah.
And
Awesome.
I passed the book around. You see how when the honey comes out of the hive, it's liquid? Well, all honey naturally granulates, and it thickens up like this. So if you want to, now that's soft right now, because you know what we did? We got a little pot on the stove with water in it, boiled the water, took the pot pot off the stove, and with the lid on, we put it in the water, okay, make sure the water doesn't go over the top. And it made it nice and soft again. Don't ever, if you wanna make honey soft, put it in the microwave oven.
Oh,
Cause
really?
it kills all of them,
All the good
minerals,
All
all
the
the good
nutrients,
things that
yeah.
are in there, the nutrients that are in there. So that's how you get it nice and soft, okay? And how do we market honey? Well, we buy those containers, and
Just let her-
we sell
let
all
her
our
one
honey,
stick in.
ourselves.
That's too much.
And we fill those 1 kilograms, and we advertise in the paper in Prince Albert. If you go to the store, look at the price of a 1 kilogram of honey. If it's a bee-made brand, it'll cost you $15. Well, it says $14.99, that's $15. If you go to the generic brand, you'll see it's $10. Well, we sell our honey, and it's pure from the hive, it's not pasteurized. We sell it for $8, and we put ads out, and we deliver honey to people in Prince Albert for $8 a container. And that's how we market our honey. Last year, we sold 1,800 of those.
We advertise the honey as unpasteurized honey.
That's-
That means that right after it's extracted, it's strained, and then it's put into packages, like that one. So it's called unpasteurized. And one really bad thing that's happening in the world today is China is sending honey here, and it's not pure honey. They're diluting the honey with syrup,
Sugar.
sugar and corn syrup, and then they sell it to these big companies, and these big companies put it in honey nut Cheerios and honey nut and all these honey flavor foods, and it's not real honey. It's just the Chinese artificial honey.
So locally produced honey is obviously way better.
Oh,
Yes.
than honey
Yes.
from other countries.
Unpasteurized.
And if you grow up and you have you want a little hobby, it's really good to start a little beehive in your yard.
Here, it just.
We need more and more
If anyone thinks that
beekeepers.
maybe someday they might want to become a beekeeper, we have a little thing here to hand out to you that says, be prepared. Why bees? Keeping bees might be simpler than you think. And it shows you all the equipment you need. And so does anyone want one of these? You want one of these? Okay, have you finished passing that around? Okay, do you want to,
Pass those out.
yeah, pass these out, give me that. Oh, you want that, that's yours, okay.
How many do you have? Two lots?
I have 19.
Nice. Does everybody want one? Good. Thank you.
Okay. And there's some good information even if you don't want to be a beekeeper.
We want to keep them in our yard, we definitely
We want to have more
Always done. That's our
beekeepers,
biggest fear.
and there are a lot of people now who are starting small hives just for themselves, so they'll have enough honey for themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, and one thing about a bee sting. When you get a bee sting, the bee has
A stinger.
a stinger, and the stinger it's barbed, and it goes into your skin, and attached to that stinger is a little pouch, a little white pouch. And around the pouch are muscles, and in the pouch is poison. And if you ever got stung by a bee and you looked at that little pouch, you'd see it's going like this. And those muscles are pumping the poison into you. So beekeeper, if you're a beekeeper, you soon learn that as soon as you feel a bee sting, you look there and you just pick out that little pouch. And the pain will go away almost immediately, and it won't swell or anything because there wasn't enough poison to get in there. It's when you get a sting and you let that little pouch and the muscles pump all the poison that's in there into you. Okay? Yes.
Actually, I think my uncle has my uncle actually has a beehive,
Mm-hmm.
and he actually makes his own honey.
Okay. Well, that's
Well, that's a
Yeah.
smart uncle.
You're lucky.
We need to have
Actually, my
more.
uncle lives on a farm.
Oh, no, farm,
Yeah.
okay. Nice.
There are a lot of people in the city who have hives too.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
But I think
They
on a farm-
sell this stuff in PV Mart.
yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
My husband and I have looked many
Yeah.
times. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, we have chickens and we want to start bees too.
Mhm.
In fact, we just bought this yesterday. We have a smoker, but it's kind of
Everything
an
is-
ancient thing. So
Yeah.
we wanted, and we needed nice new ones, so we bought a
Ah,
nice new one
nice.
to show.
Just for the demonstration?
Just for the
Mm.
demonstration.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So, any other
Alright.
questions?
I'm sure there's a lot more things that we could have told you.
Yes.